You're going to be the first person to transition from a human body to a synthetic.
Because I'm special.
If we're to believe Alien Earth and its futuristic setting of 2120, the old planet had something called governments where people used to vote for who they wanted making decisions. But then the governments fell and 5 major corporations came in, promising to fix all the problems. But of course, they did not have trivial notions of nobility and goodness in their hearts. These corporations were governed by the singular idea of profits and having the monopoly. So let's get into all of these 5 corporations and discuss all there is to discuss. Please bear in mind that this episode was created right after the second episode of Alien Earth was released, so there will be mild spoilers. But before I begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. And now let's begin. Lynch. Now, before I talk about the 2 obvious companies that appeared in the show's first 2 episodes, I shall first speak about the ones that did not really find any mention, but make no mistake, these are huge stakeholders that can have a profound impact on how things function in the Earth of Alien Earth. And Lynch is one of those companies. All we know about Lynch is that it controls all of present-day Russia, which is a smaller region than most other corporations control. However, given the name is Lynch and Hollywood isn't really a fan of Russia, we could have Lynch stand out as the most evil of all these rather evil corporations yet. There's also a possibility that not all of the corporations are evil per se, or at least not as evil and power-hungry as Utani. The 2-episode premiere of the new FX series didn't get into the details, but the show did talk about the next one. At least there was a brief mention of it. Dynamic. Now, the first episode of the series, titled Neverland, starts with the crew of USCSS Maginot preparing to cryosleep for the final leg of their journey back home. This was supposed to be a 4-month period, give or take a few days, as described by Mr. Tang, a creepy dude with beady eyes who liked to wake women as they slept in cryo. Anyway, while the crew was having their meal before the sleep, one of them was explaining how the world functioned to this new recruit. The older man explains how the world is governed by companies, and they not only own parts of Earth, but also other celestial bodies like our moon and other planets. So it's here that we learn, and from the words of the crew members, that Dynamic owns the moon. As far as Earth is concerned, they own or control the Middle East and North Africa, and the territory starts from the western borders of Turkey and goes up till Afghanistan. In fact, in the show, Miss Utani calls the boy Genius, owner of Prodigy, and she asks him to allow her to send her men into her territory so that she can extract what's hers from USCSS Maginot. After all, this deep space research vessel was Utani property. However, Boy Cavalier refuses and suggests that they let their lawyers talk and come up with a treaty. Now, in one of the earlier scenes, when they're talking about these companies, we see an Arab man standing in front of a table that has Boy Cavalier and Miss Utani at the 2 ends. There's also a few others, like Kirsch, but it's pretty obvious that this meeting is a meeting between the heads of the 5 companies, and the Arab man is probably the head of Dynamic. So it'll be interesting to see how the other companies pan out in the future of Alien Earth. And now, moving on to the next one, Threshold. The third mysterious company is called Threshold, and it controls the entire region from the other side of the Turkish border to the Caucasus Mountains. So it's safe to say that Threshold is in charge of the entire Scandinavian region as well as Europe. It also has rules over all the British Isles, which would include Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and England. So now that we've covered the 3 mysterious companies from Alien Earth, let's move on to those we know more about, namely Prodigy and Utani. Prodigy. Prodigy is the newest kid on the corporate block in the Alien universe, but it hasn't taken long for it to plant its flag in some of the choicest parts of the planet. Founded around 2110, about a decade before the events of Alien Earth by Boy Cavalier, it's the kind of company that could only be led by someone who spent his childhood winning science fairs before most people learned how to ride a bike. Cavalier's got the brains, the arrogance, and the Peter Pan fixation to match. While the other megacorps in this world have deep roots and sprawling empires, Prodigy runs lean, prides itself on being cutting edge, and throws most of its energy into research, experimentation, and building things that blur the line between man and machine. Its big claim to fame is the creation of hybrids, beings with android bodies with human consciousnesses uploaded into them. The first batch was nicknamed the Lost Boys, thanks to Cavalier's love of Peter Pan and the fact that these synthetic bodies don't age. He sees hybrids not as a novelty, but as humanity's next step, the moment we leave behind frail human forms and move permanently into synthetic shells. To him, this isn't science fiction, but something that borders on inevitability. Actor Samuel Blanken, who plays Cavalier, described Weyland-Yutani as a bloated giant weighed down by its size, while Prodigy is still nimble, with the mindset of a young tech disruptor that can pivot and pounce before the old guard even notices. In Alien Earth, Prodigy is new, but it would be wrong to undermine it as simply a tech innovator. The company's been making a name for itself and breaking the barriers of medicine and mortality. Within a decade, it managed to carve out a massive slice of the planet. By the time the US CSS Maginot crashes, Prodigy controls all of Asia up to the Russia-Mongolia border, every inch of sub-Saharan Africa and parts of southern Africa, the entirety of Oceania, including Australia, plus Greenland and Iceland. And right in the middle of all this is Prodigy City, which is where the Maginot makes its unfortunate landing. That crash starts a corporate tug-of-war. Cavalier claims the ship and whatever's inside, because it's his city and because it destroyed several buildings. But Miss Utani from Weyland-Yutani says the ship is their property. She insists the vessel is her company's property since they commissioned it in the first place. But Cavalier says that the ship ultimately fell from space, so it's his. Their back and forth isn't about negotiating in back rooms or hashing out compromises. It's more like two heads of state squaring off over contested land. They talk about lawyers and treaties, but the unspoken threat of guns and mercenaries hangs in the air. This is one of the stark differences between Alien Earth and earlier portrayals of the franchise's world. In the older films, the planet was under the control of supernations like the United Americas, the Three World Empire, and the Union of Progressive Peoples. Weyland-Yutani was powerful, sure, but it wasn't literally governing the world. It was just so massive that it blurred the lines between corporate and state. Here, in Alien Earth, the pretense is gone. Governments are extinct. It seems that after democracy and all other forms of government failed to survive, the 5 corporations stepped in with the promise of fixing everything and now run the planet as their own private boardroom. But that doesn't mean they like each other. They're not partners, they're rivals in a constant Cold War, and the next frontier isn't space exploration or colonization, but immortality. The series' opening info dump clarifies that 3 competing technologies are on the table: cyborgs, or humans with cybernetic enhancements; synths, or artificially intelligent machines; and finally, the hybrids, or synthetic bodies inhabited by human minds, people like Wendy and Slightly. Whichever tech wins out could decide which corporation eventually dominates the universe. On paper, Prodigy has a head start. Hybrids are their baby, their patented edge. And in Wendy, the main character played by Cindy Chandler, they've got the perfect test case, a dying girl reborn in a stronger, ageless body. But Cavalier isn't content with having the most advanced immortality program in the game. He wants what's on that ship, and even agrees to send in Wendy and the rest of her hybrid siblings when the Maginot goes down. Cavalier knows that whatever Weyland-Yutani has discovered and brought back aboard USCSS Maginot might be valuable enough to tip the balance further in his favor. It doesn't matter that the ship's cargo includes creatures that rip, tear, and burst out of people. If it's worth something, he wants it. Life in Prodigy's territories, and especially in Prodigy City, doesn't exactly match the shiny sales pitch. There's no public infrastructure in the old sense. If a ship crashes or disaster strikes, the corporation that owns the land is responsible for handling it, not out of goodwill, but because the territory is theirs. In Prodigy's case, that means private crisis response teams, heavily armed mercenaries, and whatever muscle they can deploy quickly. People like Hermit, aka Wendy's sibling, who works for one of these trauma teams, are as much security contractors as they are rescuers. And the ordinary employees are closer to serfs than staff. Salaries are replaced with loyalty contracts, and loyalty is often enforced through debt, dependence, or sheer lack of alternatives. That's the part Alien Earth doesn't water down. Prodigy might have slicker branding than Weyland-Yutani, and Boy Cavalier may brag about not making it about money, but instead human growth and making humanity better, but for the people under its thumb, the day-to-day reality isn't much different from being stuck on a Weyland-Yutani mining colony in deep space. You still answer to the company, you still risk your life for its interests, and you're still disposable if things get ugly. Although I must admit that life in Prodigy cities like Neverland and New Siam is still far better than life in Weyland-Yutani-owned cities. And speaking of them, let's discuss the final and most evil corporation in the entire Alien universe, and probably the entire fictional universe: Weyland-Yutani. Weyland-Yutani has been the face of corporate greed and questionable ethics in the Alien universe for decades, and by the time the events of Alien Earth take place, it seems it has already become as vast as it ever could be. It first entered the franchise with the original Alien, where it owned the Nostromo, the ill-fated cargo ship that took Ellen Ripley to LV-426 and straight into the path of the Xenomorphs. From that point on, the company has been the constant lurking presence behind most of the franchise's disasters, pulling strings from the safety of its boardrooms while others bled and died in deep space. The name itself is the product of a merger. Weyland, founded by Peter Weyland, the ambitious billionaire we saw in Prometheus, eventually joined forces with Utani in 2099, after Weyland's voyage to meet the engineers. Weyland's obsession had always been immortality, chasing it through science and technology, and those priorities carried through into the merged entity. The Alien Earth showrunner, Noah Hawley, adds another layer to the picture, describing Utani as a matriarchal dynasty handed down from grandmother to mother to daughter. By the time of the series, Peter Weyland is in cryosleep, which leaves Miss Utani as the de facto head, even if hers is the second name in the partnership. Her challenge isn't small, of course. She is supposed to be keeping her grip on power while navigating a planet where 5 corporations run everything, all of them dreaming of monopoly. The company's reach isn't limited to a single industry. It's knee-deep in products and industries like synthetics, mining and terraforming, scientific research, interstellar travel, and shipping. It has colonies scattered across worlds and an influence that stretches from Earth to the outer reaches of space, like it owns Mars and Saturn. The Maginot itself ties into this story. Roughly 65 years before Alien Earth, Utani's grandmother had commissioned the ship for the singular purpose of collecting alien life forms. These specimens became something Miss Utani sees as her birthright, and when Prodigy moves to claim them after the Maginot ends up in their territory, she's not about to stand aside. To her, those life forms could shift the immortality race away from synthetic or cybernetic solutions and toward something biological. I already mentioned how companies are trying to ace their synths, hybrids, and cyborgs, and thanks to Morrow, the Maginot's security officer, we learn that Weyland-Yutani has been working on the cyborg angle. It's a logical fit for them. That is, melding human adaptability with machine durability, and in a world where living forever means controlling the future, it's a technology worth dying for, or, in Weyland-Yutani's case, worth killing for. Through the Maginot's crew, we also get a clearer picture of Weyland-Yutani's dominance on Earth. The corporation controls all of North and South America, plus, as I mentioned, Mars and Saturn outright. Its colonization efforts go beyond that, with settlements and facilities scattered across multiple star systems. Later in the franchise's timeline, the company's focus on alien life shifts towards something even riskier: direct experimentation on xenomorphs. In Alien Romulus, we see Weyland-Yutani attempting to bioengineer them, most likely as weapons. But with Alien Earth's added context, there's reason to believe their interest goes beyond military applications. Extending human lifespans through biological means could be the endgame, with xenomorph biology serving as the raw material for something humanity was never meant to have. Marvelous verdict. It is a fight between Cavalier and Utani. Cavalier loves to paint his company as the noble and nimble future while calling the rest outdated giants. But the truth is the company is almost as cutthroat as the rest, as long as profits and scientific advancements are not involved. In Alien Earth, corporate wars aren't fought with speeches or negotiations. They're decided through patents. Land grabs, and, when necessary, armed teams. And the danger isn't limited to what's crawling around in derelict ships. In this world, the real predators wear suits, trade stock options, and plan to outlast everyone else. Looking at the map, Prodigy's control over sub-Saharan Africa, southern Asia, Greenland, Iceland, and Oceania means its rise probably rattled Dynamic, Lynch, and Threshold more than Wayland Utani. It's the new neighbor with expansion on its mind, and those borders are getting closer every year. For the older corporations, it's a steady push into territories they've long considered safe. Wayland Utani, though, plays its own game. Decades of mining worlds, testing experimental tech, and quietly gathering alien specimens have kept it at the top. In Alien Earth, it's still holding vast chunks of the planet and multiple off-world colonies. Whether the focus is on cyborg programs, bioengineering alien organisms, or locking down entire planets, for Wayland Utani, the end goal never changes. It's always about growing the reach, keeping control, and making sure no one else gets there first. As the series will progress, we'll see more of the two corporate heads going after each other, and knowing the two actors who are playing the characters, it'll be fun to see them share the screen. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.